This video will take you through completing the Unit 3 Equations study guide with a step-by-step. You can pause the video and fill in your paper as necessary and then resume when you are ready. Hopefully by providing this step-by-step study guide completion, you'll be better prepared for the assessment. For part 1, we are reviewing the order of operations with variable substitution, and you need to show your substitution. So if D is equal to a -4, I'm going to replace D with a -4. So the equation will read 3 times D is a -4. Notice that I use parentheses whenever I substitute in a negative number, to the second power, plus D, again, another -4, in parentheses, F means D times F, where F is 1/4. You then follow order of operations to simplify this problem. You start with exponents. -4 squared means -4 times -4, which is a positive 16. On the right-hand side, there were no exponents, so I'm just going to multiply the -4 times 1/4. This -4 is 4 over a 1. So if I multiply my numerators, -4 times 1, I get a -4. And on the bottom, I have denominators of 1 and a 4. I multiply 1 times 4, and I get a 4. I now have multiplication added to a -4 divided by 4. That becomes a -1. And 3 times 16 is a 48. 48 take away 1 gives me my final answer of a 47. If you were going to do this in Desmos, you would still need to show this substitution line on your paper because it says show your substitution. So you would still write out your substitution problem, but in Desmos you would type D equals -4. On the next line you would type F equals 1/4. And then you would type the expression 3D squared plus DF. And when you look over to the side, you will see that Desmos shows it is a 47. So in either case, using substitution or Desmos, you must show what the expression is going to look like once you put the replacement values into the expression. You can evaluate it on paper following order of operations, or you can let Desmos evaluate it by typing in the replacement values and the given expression and then looking over to the right and seeing what Desmos says. Let's try number 2. This is the absolute value of M take away K as the numerator. So M is a -12. Take away K, K is a 4. And we're looking for that to be the absolute value in my numerator. Well, the absolute value of -12 take away 4 becomes the absolute value of -16. And the absolute value of -16 is just saying how far is -16 away from 0, which is 16. So the numerator becomes a 16. Once you're done with the numerator, then you can go down to the denominator. The denominator, we have the funny looking division sign. That's called the square root symbol, also known as the radical. W is a 68. Take away K, which is a 4. I would then go through and simplify 68, take away 4, which is 64, and the square root of 64 is asking us what number times itself makes 64, which is 8. I have now simplified my numerator, I've simplified my denominator, and I finally just have to say 16 divided by 8, and that gives me the final answer of a 2. The substitution that would have to be shown is this initial portion right here, where you take the initial expression and show the values that would be replaced for the given replacement values. In Desmos, if you wish to use Desmos to show your work or to do the work, you are still going to type in your replacement values. W equals 68 on one line, K equals 4 on the next line, M equals -12 on the third line. Then in Desmos, you have to type the expression. To make this as a fraction, you're going to first hit in Desmos the fraction bar on the right-hand side of your screen. It says A over B. Then go up to the top. And in the top, you need to make the absolute value bars. They're on the left side of your screen. It says the absolute value of A. So it will give you the vertical bar. Then you type M minus K, and it will close the absolute value bar for you. So get out of the absolute value bar and move down to the bottom. Now you have to hit the square root button, which is on the left side of your Desmos screen. And underneath that square root, you're going to type W minus K. And then you're going to get out. And if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, Desmos will give you that too. That is section 1 on order of operations using substitution, both substitution and letting Desmos do the work for you. In section 2, we're going into our solving of equations. All of our equations are two-step equations that just need some rearranging. We might have to rearrange by applying the distributive property, which would always be done first. After you apply the distributive property, if you have to, the second thing you're going to look to do is collect your like terms. And if your variables are on different sides, that is kind of like collecting like terms, but we want to get our variables on one side, or get your variables together. Once you've done that, you are down to a two-step equation. And in a two-step equation, you are going to use inverse operations to isolate the variable. You will undo any addition or subtraction first, and then you will undo any multiplication or division after that, and you will get your variable by itself. So let's look at question number 3. I don't see any distributive property because there's no parentheses in the problem. So I'm going to look to collect any like terms. I see a 4x and I see a -x. Don't forget to scoop your signs. 4x minus x, that's a -1x, gives me 3x plus 9 is equal to 24. Subtract 9 from both sides, and you have 3 times x is equal to 15. The positive 9, the negative 9 were inverse. They went away. They made a 0. You don't have to write plus 0 because of the identity property. Now I'm going to undo the multiplication by dividing by the number attached to the x, which is called the coefficient. In this case, it's a 3, and you get x is equal to 5. If you wanted to check this, this is where you would use substitution, like we did up in the top part, by replacing the x with the 5 and seeing if 4 times 5, which is 20, plus 9 is 29, take away 5, 29, take away 5 is a 24. 24 does equal 24, and my number works. Or in Desmos, you would type x equals 5, and then you would type the left half of the equation, 4x plus 9 minus x, and you would look on the right and see that Desmos shows it as 24. If it does, then you know that your answer of x equals 5 was correct. For number 4, I don't see distributive property. There's no parentheses, nothing to distribute. I can't collect my like terms just yet because they're on opposite sides of that equal sign, kind of like that river separating it into the two different sides of the equation. I see an 8p on the left and a -3p on the right. You always want to move the one that there is less of. -3 is less than 8, so we want to move -3 by putting its opposite, +3p, onto both sides. The +3p and the -3p are inverses, and they go away. And 8p plus 3p makes 11p plus 4. is equal to 26. There's your two-step equation. So now all I need to do is get rid of the addition by subtracting 4 from both sides, and you get 11 times P is equal to 22. And then you're going to undo the multiplication by dividing on both sides by the 11, and you get P is equal to 2. Again, you can check this by substituting 2 in for P. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 plus 4 is 20. On the right-hand side, we would say 3 times P is 3 times 2, or 6. 26 minus 6 is 20. We got 20 on the left and 20 on the right. Since 20 is equal to 20, we know that when P is 2, the left side equals the right side. And that's exactly what you wanted to type in to Desmos. You would type P equals 2. Your next line, you would type 8P plus 4. Go down one more line and type 26 minus 3P, and you'll see the answer for this and this are the same, which means that the left side equals the right side when P is equal to 2. And that's exactly what we wanted. Question number 5 is one of the ones we call a big fraction. And when we have a big fraction, this numerator right here is protected. We can't do anything with that plus 8 just yet. So this is some number divided by 5 equals 6. The first thing you have to do is get rid of the dividing by 5. So you're going to multiply by 5 on both sides. Multiplying by 5 and dividing by 5 are inverse operations, and they go away, making a 1 times that quantity. Well, 1 times anything is whatever that other thing is. So I'm now just left with 2 times C plus 8, and I don't need parentheses. That's just all that's on the top. There's nothing else left on the left. And on the right, I have 6 times 5, which is 30. So I have now taken this down to our two-step equation again. I have to undo the addition by subtracting 8 on both sides. I get 2 times C. Adding 8 and subtracting 8 are inverses. They go away. And 30 take away 8 is a 22. You're now going to divide to undo the multiplication of C times 2. So we divide by 2 on both sides, and we get C is equal to 11. You can always substitute back in. 2 times C is 22. 22 plus 8 is 30. 30 divided by 5 equals 6, as it's supposed to. In Desmos, you would type C equals 11. You would go down a line, make a big fraction. In the numerator of the fraction, you would type 2C plus 8. And in the denominator of the fraction, you would type the 5. You would look over to the right, and you would see that Desmos shows you it was equal to 6. So you know that when C is 11, the equation works. Number 6 is an example of the distributive property. Here's a number and a set of parentheses. If you see a set of parentheses, you know that you need to take the -3 or whatever number is outside and multiply it by each term that's inside. So we're going to say -3 times 4x. So -3 times 4 is a -12. So -3 times 4x would be a -12x. Then you have to do -3 times -20. Negative times negative is positive. 3 times 20 is 60. And that's the distributive property. Bring down the rest equals 12, and you'll see I have a two-step equation. Undo the two-step equation by getting rid of the addition, by putting a subtraction of that number on both sides. Those are inverses, and they go away. -12x is left on the left, and 12 take away 60 is a -48 on the right-hand side. I'm then going to undo the two-step or the single equation where it's multiplication by dividing by -12 on both sides. -12 divided by -12 makes a 1, and 1 times x is just x. is equal to negative divided by negative is a positive, and 48 divided by 12 is a 4. Your final answer is x is equal to a 4. You could check 4 times 4 is 16. 16 minus 20 is a negative 4. A negative 4 multiplied by a negative 3 makes a positive 12, as it shows on the right. In Desmos, you would type x equals 4. You would go down a line and type the left, negative 3, parenthesis, 4x minus 20, close parenthesis. You would look to the right and you'd see the 12. Try it. Number 7 is also distributive property. You have a number and you have a set of parentheses, which means you're going to take the number and distribute it by multiplying, because that's 2/3 times the quantity inside the parentheses. So we will say 2/3 multiplied by 9x, and you can use your calculator to do this. You could say 2 divided by 3 times 9, or you could say 2 times 9 is 18, divided by 3 gives you a 6x. Now you have to do 2/3 times negative 15. So 2/3 times the 15, and this is a negative, well, that's a negative 15, so plus, and I'll put the negative there. So 2 times the negative 15 is a negative 30, and negative 30 divided by 3 is a negative 10. So positive times negative gives me my negative. Positive times positive makes the first positive. So our signs agree. 2/3 of 9 is 6. 2/3 of 15 is 10. Then you can always use your calculator to figure that out if you need to. You would say 2 divided by 3, then times a negative 15. And it'll come right out with that negative 10 for you. Equals negative 28. You're back to a two-step equation. What do we undo first? Any adding or subtracting. So I'll get rid of that negative 10 by adding 10 to both sides. Negative 10 and positive 10 are opposites. I'm left with 6x on the left. A negative 28 and a positive 10 is a negative 18. Then you're going to divide both sides by the 6 to get x by itself, and your answer is x is equal to a negative 3. Now, some of you in class said, Mr. Philippi, couldn't we get rid of that 2/3 first? And yes, we can. So we have 2/3 times 9x minus 15 is equal to negative 28. So this is an alternate solution for those of you that understand it. Okay? If you want to get rid of this multiplication on the outside, you can do this by dividing both sides by that 2/3, or we get rid of fractions by multiplying by their reciprocal when we flip them upside down, because we'd say 3 times 2 is 6 over 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 over 6 is equal to 1. And so this all cancels out as opposites, and you're just left with 9x minus 15. But on the right-hand side, we have to multiply by that 3/2, the reciprocal. If you wanted to divide it, you would type into Desmos negative 28 divide, and then 2 divide 3, and it would still work for you. But if we work with it like this, we have negative 28 over 1. You would multiply 28 by 3, and then you would divide by 2, and you would get a negative 42. Now you have your two-step equation. Add 15 to both sides, and you get 9 times x is equal to negative 27. Negative 42 and a positive 15 makes a negative 27. And then you're going to divide both sides by the 9, and you still get the same answer. X is equal to negative 3. So either method works. The first method applies the distributive property. The second method undoes the multiplication on the outside to get rid of the parentheses and then your two-step equation. Whichever one you're more comfortable with is fine. If it asks you to use distributive property to solve the problem, then you must use the first method because that applies the distributive property. This one does not apply the distributive property, but it does get you to the same answer. So here we are on the back of the study guide. And for here, it asks you to apply that distributive property. So we're going to make sure that we are applying the distributive property, which says that A times B plus or minus C is the same thing as saying A times C plus or minus A, oh, sorry, that's an A times B, sorry, and then an A times C. So A times B and A times C. So let's look at the first problem. I see distributive property right here at the beginning, so I'm going to say 3 times x, and 3 times a negative 5 is a negative 15. So that's a distributive property on the left. On the right-hand side, I can just write this the way it is, or I see right here I have 11x and a negative 2x. Let's go ahead and combine those right now. 11x take away 2x is a 9x minus 12. Now I have a variable on the left of the equal sign and a variable on the right. Do we want to move 3x or do we want to move 9x? Well, 3 is less than 9, so we should move this 3x. And the opposite of 3x is a negative 3x, so we put a minus 3x on both sides. These go away. We're left with a negative 15 on the left. 9x minus 3x is 6x. Take away 12 on the right. Now this is a two-step equation. We just happen to have our variable on the right instead of on the left. We'll leave it that way. We want to undo the subtraction by adding 12 to both sides. And negative 15 plus 12 is a negative 3 is equal to 6x. We need to get x by itself, so you're going to divide both sides by the 6. And negative 3 over 6 is a negative 1/2 is equal to x. We need to turn the equation around so our variable comes first. X equals negative 1/2 is your final answer. And again, you can always use Desmos to check. You would type in x equals negative 1/2, then type 3 parentheses x minus 5, go down a line and type 11x minus 12 minus 2x. Remember, in Desmos, you always substitute in or type in from the original equation. Don't do it with any information that you have already changed. Here's number 9. We're going to have 10 take away, but I have 2 and then the parentheses. That's where your distributive property comes in. I'm multiplying negative 2 times 5m. That gives me a negative 10m. And then I have a negative 2 times a positive 1, and that makes a negative 2. So there's your distributive property, and then it's equal to negative 12. I see that I have a whole number 10 and another integer negative 2 that can be combined. I'm going to do my negative 10m listed first, so my variable's in the front. 10 take away 2 is a positive 8 is equal to a negative 12. You're down to your two-step equation, so you subtract 8 from both sides, undoing the addition. That leaves you with a negative 10m is equal to negative 12, and a negative 8 gives you a negative 20. Divide both sides by a negative 10, and you have m is equal to negative divided by negative is a positive, 20 divided by 10 is a 2, and m is equal to 2. Again, you can substitute 2 for m. 5 times 2 is 10. 10 plus 1 is 11. 2 times 11 is a 22. 10 take away 22 is a negative 12. That would be substitution. In Desmos, you would type m equals 2, and you would type 10 minus 2, parentheses, 5m plus 1, and close your parentheses. When you look to the right, Desmos will show the negative 12, and you know that your answer m equals 2 is correct. Final two problems. These are our application problems where they want you to write an equation that matches the words, but you do not need to solve them. So for number 10, you're looking for your key words. The product of, well, product of means the answer to a multiplication problem. So I know I'm going to have some kind of a multiplication problem. I have the number 4 and a number n. It wants us to use the n. If it tells you the variable, you have to use the variable. So if I want to multiply 4 and n, I just say 4n. That means 4 times n. Then it says plus 3. Well, plus is the addition sign, and we have our number 3. So I'm going to add that behind my n. Then it says is equal to. Well, that's my equal sign. To get to 2 less than anything, I have to take 2 away from something. This is the turnaround. So I have to leave a space, and then I'm going to take 2 away from something else. I'm going to take it away from the number n. So I'm going to take 2 away from the number n. And this is the product of 4 and a number increased by 3 is equal to 2 less than the number n. You do not need to solve it. You just needed to write it. We can solve it, but you don't have to. Number 11, last problem. We're almost done. We have Mary, we have Peter, we have Lucy, and we have John. So Mary, Peter, Lucy, and John. All 4 are picking chestnuts. It says Lucy and Mary picked the same amount of chestnuts as Peter. So Lucy and Mary picked the same amount as Peter. John picked 2 kilograms of chestnuts. So if Mary and Lucy picked the same amount as Peter, do we know what Peter picked? No. That's your variable. So Peter is going to be our variable we're going to use. And Peter is going to pick some amount of chestnuts, X. I know Mary picked the same amount as Peter. I know Lucy picked the same amount as Peter. So X equals the number of chestnuts that Peter picked. It just so happens that Mary and Lucy picked the same amount that he did. It didn't say together they picked the same amount as him. It just says Lucy and Mary picked the same amount of chestnuts as Peter. So Mary picked the same amount, Lucy picked the same amount. John picked 2 kilograms. It says together, the 4 of them picked 26. So Mary plus Peter plus Lucy plus John, everybody all together, picked 26 kilograms. So I am going to say X Mary plus X Peter plus X Lucy plus 2 John is equal to 26. Collect your like terms. 1x plus another x makes 3x plus 2 is equal to 26. There's your two-step equation. You don't have to solve it. It just said for 10 and 11 to write the equation to match it, but do not solve it. So here is my equation. Your equation starts off here, and it is simplified down to here, and that's as far as you need to go. You want to do it just for fun? Let's see. We would take away 2 first. We'd get 3 times x is equal to 26 minus 2, which is a 24. And then we would divide both sides by the 3. And we would get x is equal to 24 divided by 3, which is 8. Remember, we were talking about kilograms, so it'd be 8 kilograms. And that is the final problem on the study guide. I hope that going through this with you step by step has helped you to prepare and review. Let me know if you have any other questions, and I will happily help you out before our test. Have a great evening, and thanks for watching.